We've got a great event here today because, and for your businesses that are interested in taking a look at defence, what you've actually got is Boeing's customer here with Phil, the Ministry of Defence. That's primarily the reason that Boeing have got a reasonably big defence business in the UK that I'll go on and talk about. Looking at some of our products and programs, you'll find a repeating theme from me is to when you look at a different industry sector, is to really understand the players in it. And I have quite a bit of information in the pack as to how to get a better understanding of Boeing. Most of the defence businesses that are in the UK have really good information that you can access. I'll talk about Boeing in the UK because obviously some businesses have an opportunity to export. For some businesses it's more a case of UK or European supply, so we'll talk to that a little bit and talk about the shape and size of the supply chain and how to navigate that maze. But I think you'll take away a great deal of benefit from those businesses that have actually had a go at that and had some success in it. I'll talk to one or two of those businesses that are in our supply chain as I go through. So first of all, a bit of an introduction to Boeing. There are two primary divisions of Boeing that you may or may not know. At a wild guess, you'll know this division of our company, Boeing Commercial Aeroplanes, somewhat better than the defence side I'll go on to talk about. But we're headquartered in Washington State in an area called Puget Sound. Revenues in 2012, around about 49 billion, about 85,000 employees. So it's a pretty reasonably sized business. We design, assemble and support commercial jetliners in this business. And this is really important to understand what we do and what we don't do to start understanding our supply chain. We design, assemble and support. If you go take a look at Toyota Burnaston, Honda in Swindon or Nissan up in Sunderland, you'll see their plants at BMW down in Oxford. They're integration plants. They pull together the parts and put them together. Much more than the aerospace industry in Europe. That's what we do in Seattle. These are integration businesses where an undercarriage system comes in, a wing, a fuselage comes in, we put them together. So we really do that end of it, assemble, support and design these aircraft. About 75% of the world's commercial fleet are Boeing aircraft. And it spawns the theme, if it ain't Boeing, I ain't going. So keep that one in mind when you're selecting your carriers. It helps us tremendously. Interestingly, talking about this whole area of export and the complexity that's involved, Boeing are the US's largest exporter. In some years, it's actually up to nearly 90% of the output from the production lines gets exported. And so our CEO is on one of President Obama's working groups looking at export from the US. So there's a lot of expertise that can be pulled into. And in addition to the design and manufacture of the aircraft, looking down from the 737 at the top there to 747-8 at the bottom, the newest aircraft's the one in the middle, 787. Just a week or two ago we flew the 787-9. So there's lots of development of that aeroplane now and for the future. So the commercial part of the industry is in a really upward cycle at the moment. We can't make these things fast enough. The little fella at the top, we're trying to up production by 30% this year. We make about 38 of those a month at the moment. We're trying to get that up to around 45. And even a huge aircraft like the 777, we're trying to go from 8 a month up to about 11. So there's huge growth in that industry. The industry is absolutely hungry for fuel-efficient aircraft. And I'll talk about some of our discriminators in the future. 787 is our newest design, and if you can see from the wing on that thing, that is hugely efficient. It's about 20% more fuel efficient than its competitors. I'll almost guarantee you know less about the defence part of Boeing. Boeing Defence, Space and Security, headquartered in St. Louis. Revenues in that part of our business are about 32 billion, so again pretty sizable, 59,000 employees. And we design and manufacture military transports, tankers, freighters and helicopters. A really significant part of that business is supporting those aircraft in the hands of the armed services all around the world, big international sales on those. We're also Pretty big in the space industry, which isn't generally well known. We're probably the largest contractor to NASA these days. We build a lot of the space station and about half of the space shuttle. Good satellite sales in the UK from our El Segundo plant in California. Currently supplying satellites. We've just got the order for the 5th satellite to Inmarsat. So there's some great relationship on those products. We access less of that supply chain at the moment, but it's a very new and emerging industry in the UK. The business mix is around about 60% commercial airplanes, around about 40%, with a total revenue figure of 81.7 billion last year. So, a little closer to home in the UK, very much a red letter year for us this year, with 75 years of partnership in the UK. Boeing first put our roots down and started supplying the UK with Harvard training aircraft about 70 years ago. These days, the selection of products we have in the UK are the E3, that's the AWACS Century aircraft. We manufacture, although Augusta Westland in Yeovil prime the aircraft in the UK, the Apache attack helicopter, that's a Boeing product out of Mesa, Arizona. Chinook transport helicopters, if you aren't familiar with these helicopters, they're the great big two-bladed ones that goes over, or two-rotor ones that go over Northampton. One Chinook can lift another. It's a fantastic platform. You really, that is just such an incredible aeroplane. And the new Mark 6 is, starts arriving in the UK. The 14 new helicopters the Royal Air Force is going to operate start arriving at the end of this year and early into next. C-17 military transport aircraft. The Royal Air Force operates 7 of these from Brize Norton. It's the great big 4-engine jet that's set up in the top right-hand slide. We've recently opened an international training centre, a simulator centre for flight crews and maintenance crews in Farnborough for that aircraft. So that's the sort of deployment you start seeing in the UK. Talking about and Harpoon missile, been rocking about on the back of Navy boats for about 30 years now, probably due for a bit of a refresh and paint. The supply footprint in the UK, the average spend over about the last 7 years has been significantly above $1 billion a year. So we have a big supply chain in the UK. The international element of Boeing's supply chain, the UK is somewhere in the top 3 international suppliers into it. So it really is a big piece of our industry. 295 companies and supplier partners in the UK, and that would directly support about 1,400 jobs. Although when you start looking in the world of economics, you can expand that to a number of jobs that are supported beyond that supply chain, in the lower tiers of that supply chain. Boeing Defence UK Limited was a business that was stood up 5 or 6 years ago, and it came from a government policy at the time which said if you want to supply into the UK, you've really got to be here. And that business is now about 1,400 people and is largely centred on 2 areas: support of the aircraft, depth maintenance, modification and upgrade of the aircraft that we supply to the Royal Air Force, and also IT systems. There are 2 big competency centres we operate to support the IT networks that the MOD needs to do its tasks each day. One of those is in Milton Keynes, the other one in Bristol. So that's our sort of deployment. We're primarily spread around the IT centres and where the aircraft are operated. It's not just about our industrial cooperation and collaboration in the UK. It's not just about the supply chain and making things for Boeing or Boeing's supply chain. We do a huge amount of research and development here in the UK. We have 3 large advanced research centres. The first of these is now just over 10 years old, the Advanced Manufacturing Research Centre with Sheffield University. Being in high-tech manufacturing, I'd be surprised if some of your organisations haven't come across that centre. It now employs nearly 400 people. It's a huge research centre. It's across about 7 buildings. Organisations like NMI, Castings, CTI, Technology International are now part of that centre, and it really is a great location for Boeing to understand manufacturing techniques and manufacturing processes, but really the recipient organisations and the members of that centre, which are largely UK companies, not exclusively UK companies by any means, but largely UK companies. Put simply, we tend not to manufacture using these processes now, but we're very, very anxious that those technologies and those processes move forwards and evolve, and hence we were the founding partner in that centre. Rolls, Royce really used that centre, I have to say, to a great deal better degree than we do. But they've established the Forming Centre, the Advanced Forming Centre with Strathclyde University, and we joined that as a member. And more locally, just across at Cranfield University on the Bedford campus, we have set up an integrated vehicle health management centre, which it really is multi-sector. We also have an involvement with the Welding Institute through linear friction welding and friction stir welding. Kinetic, they have a huge wind tunnel in Farnborough, which we use extensively and work with them to do the airworthiness testing on the UK Chinooks. And to the motorsport industry, we have some very common areas of interest with the motorsport industry. To pick off the lower of the projects, computational fluid dynamics, we were interested in taking a commercially available product apart and using it in different ways, and so was what was Renault at the time, now Lotus. So we combined together to rework this tool, and some of that collaboration is a great way to work. The other thing, the motorsport industries are fantastic at rapid prototyping and developing their product. The aerospace and defence industry really not so good at that, so we've been working with them to learn how we can be better in that area. I talked about getting to the bottom of what's important with a particular customer. And so what I've done on this chart is put some of Boeing's discriminators, the things that are important to us. If you can add value to any of these areas, you stand a chance of being successful in Boeing's supply chain. It's a lot more difficult if there isn't real significant value to add to one of these areas. So affordability, let's talk to that a little bit. At the moment, we all know here in the UK, and it's very apparent in the US right now, that our customers are being asked, particularly the Ministry of Defence, the DoD in the US, to do a lot more for a lot less. We're asking our armed forces to complete all the missions they've always completed, but on a lot less money. And that's the pressure around the world in the defence industry, more for less. On our commercial businesses, if you look, the airlines make no money. There's a very, very slim profit margin, and they are heavily oriented now around the cost of fuel. The cost of fuel is a huge part of their business costs. We've got to help them be successful by supplying them more competitive commercial aircraft, and these things are expensive. So our role in that is to make sure that we are really, truly globally competitive. So as our competitors grow, I mean, there's a duopoly at the moment in that area between Airbus and Boeing. There are really good competitors that aren't shaped particularly well at the moment, but will be in a few years, and we've got to get our act together across the next few years to make sure that we can sustain our market share in that area. Ease of use and sustainability, looking at the defence side of the house, our platforms last for years. The Chinooks, which we're just getting new Mark 6s this year, they've been around quite a while, some 40 or 50 years, and they're continually modified. The RAF's aircraft are just getting new, very high capability Julius glass cockpits. So these aircrafts have to have open architecture, and they'll be modified and upgraded for years. Environmentally progressive, we're looking at fuel efficiency, and also a fantastic project here in the UK centred by Nottingham University on what you can do to recycle carbon fibres and reuse them in other parts of the aircraft. So we're looking at fibres which are can be recovered from the manufacturing process and used in other parts, generally non-structural parts of the aircraft. And breakthrough performance. If it can go faster, can lift more, carry more troops, get them to where they need to be faster, have a higher availability, those are all important discriminators for our company because they're important to our customers. So how that relates to our suppliers, we've got a really diverse group of suppliers working with us, and they deliver world-class products and services. There isn't much room in this supply chain for me too stuff. It's always got to be the things that move us forwards. And we look at sustained high performance in terms of cost, quality and delivery. It's really interesting to think of a production line, and I always think of the Renton production lines or Everett, where the volumes are really high on commercial aeroplanes. You know, 98.8% on-time delivery is not acceptable. They receive into that one factory in Everett alone 2 million parts a week. You imagine 1 point something% being non-conforming. It's just not acceptable. So the very highest standards of quality, delivery, on-time delivery performance and affordability are really the things that drive our supply chain, because they're the things that are important to our customers. So how to navigate this maze a bit? The first thing is it's really important to figure out where your product and service fits into the supply chain. A lot of people look at defence and will sort of gravitate to the key players in that defence industry, and it's generally not a good idea. It's really a case of figuring out where the product or service fits into the supply chain and who does what. In Boeing's case, we tend to be a prime contractor, although not always by any means, and an integrator of systems. So we'll buy an undercarriage system, we'll buy a fuel system. We don't buy the component parts that make those systems. Those parts will generally be bought by our first tier supply chain, and the suppliers to that, the second tier, manufacture some great components, some great subsystems for those businesses. In the aerospace industry in the UK, there'll be businesses like GE, GKN, these really great, Rolls-Royce, the key industry, aerospace industry providers. Smaller businesses do have their place. They're very much niche capabilities, innovation, those sorts of areas, and there are a number of really great SMEs that supply us, right down to almost 1- and 2-man businesses if they've really got a specialist area of innovation. But again, still relevant to what we do. So my message on that is really understand the business that you're targeting. Now, to help with that, there's a lot of information available. Boeing.com isn't just some sort of website that gives people where our factories are and broadly what we do. It has huge degrees of information about our product ranges, news about contracts, where our locations, what awards we've been successful with, and there is a fantastic part of the website, Doing Business with Boeing, that tells you everything you need to know about being a Boeing supplier, how we do business, what quality assurance requirements we have, and so on. We have a dedicated Boeing.co.uk website, which is Boeing Defence UK Limited, the UK defence business I mentioned, and again you can drill down into where we are in the UK and what we do in the UK. It's very different to what we do in the States. I want to put a plug in here for the services of UKTI DSO. You're going to hear about many of the SME services, but certainly I've been involved in sales and marketing for 25 odd years here in the aerospace and defence business, and I didn't know half the things that these guys could offer, and there's some really terrific things they can do to help your business. We are signatories, in fact we're the first signatory to a new policy called the Defence and Security Industrial Engagement Policy, which is there to encourage prime contractors, international contractors like Boeing, to work with UK supply chain, UK research and development. And what that means is that we'll always try and help see how relevant someone's offer is to Boeing. And just some screenshots of the websites to show you the sort of areas moving through the supplier portal. If you just go into your search engine and put Doing Business with Boeing, you'll find the Boeing supplier portal. And information on this part of the site where you can actually register on the site the details of your business and what you do. It's not any form of engagement, but it's there for us to look at. So it is a good step if you think what you have is relevant.